All right, diving in today, and we like to get practical here on the deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
You guys sent in this really great conversation between two hosts from a show called English Insights, all about learning English as a beginner.
Cool.
So we're going to extract the most valuable advice for you guys,
For sure.
especially for those of you who are just starting out.
Yeah, I think one thing that stood out right away
Yeah.
is how they talked about that initial feeling. When you first start learning English and it just feels like this massive, overwhelming mountain of grammar and pronunciation.
It's so true.
It's like, where do I even begin?
So how do you even start chipping away at that mountain?
Exactly.
They had this really cool suggestion about using textbooks,
Oh, yeah.
but also listening to English podcasts at the same time.
I like that.
So why is that such a powerful combination, especially when you're just starting out?
Well, I think it's because you've got the textbook,
Right.
which gives you the kind of the blueprint, right? The structure, the rules.
Oh, like the foundation.
Yeah, exactly. The foundation of the language.
Yeah.
But then when you listen to the podcast, it's like you're immersing yourself in the actual sound,
Right.
how it flows.
Right.
It's not just about understanding the individual word,
Yeah.
but your ear gets used to the rhythm,
Oh, the natural.
yeah,
Natural, yeah.
the musicality of it.
Yes.
And then it helps, the rules that you're learning in the textbook
Okay.
to actually sound more natural when you encounter them. You know what I mean?
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So as you're listening more and more and your ears are tuning in, it seems like vocabulary is kind of the next frontier.
Yeah.
And they talked about reading,
Mm-hmm.
using flashcards,
Yes.
and also making sure that you're actually using those words
Yes.
in sentences.
That's key.
Why is that so important?
Because, you can recognize a word, right?
Yeah.
Like you see it on a flashcard.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I know that word.
Yeah, I've seen that word before.
But if you don't actually use it
Right.
in a sentence,
Right.
it's like you don't really own it yet.
I don't really know it.
You don't really know it.
You
Yeah.
haven't internalized it.
Exactly. So by putting it in a sentence, you're forcing your brain to engage with it more deeply.
Right.
Think about, how it grammatically fits.
Yeah.
What are the different shades of meaning?
Oh, that's good.
And it becomes more yours.
It's like taking ownership of the word.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think this is interesting, too. They talked about learning
Yeah.
idioms and
I
expressions
love that.
and those little quirks of the language.
Mhm.
Why are those so important?
I think because idioms, a lot of times,
Yeah.
they carry cultural
Yeah.
context.
Oh, okay.
So, it's not just about learning
Yeah.
a phrase.
Right.
It's like you're getting a little window
Oh.
into how native speakers actually think
Right.
and communicate.
So it's like a deeper understanding.
Yeah, and it makes your English sound,
Okay.
more natural, less like a textbook.
So it's like adding that
Yeah.
that flavor.
But yes, exactly.
Okay. So they also talked about some common mistakes that English learners make.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was incorrect verb tense usage.
Yeah, that's a big one.
What's a good way for people to get better at that?
I think just seeing and hearing the verb tenses used in different situations.
No. Okay.
So, instead of just memorizing the forms,
Right.
trying to understand
Yeah.
when and why each tense is used.
So actually see it in action.
Yeah, exactly. Like in stories and conversations about the past
Right.
plans for the future.
Okay.
And your brain starts to make those connections naturally.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Another challenge they mentioned was pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
And they really emphasized listening to and mimicking native speakers.
Absolutely. And I think what's really important there is to pay attention to
Okay.
the subtle sounds.
Yeah.
How words connect to each other. So
Okay.
don't just passively listen.
Right.
Actually try to imitate what you're hearing
So actively
actively.
try to copy it.
Yeah. Even if it feels weird at first.
Yeah.
You can even record yourself
Oh, that's good.
and then compare it to the original and see where your
Okay.
pronunciation might be different.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
And I think the overarching advice from the English Insights hosts was really consistency.
Yes. So important.
Why is that?
Because, if you think about how our brains learn, regular spaced repetition
Yeah.
is so much more effective
Right.
than cramming everything in at once.
Oh,
Yeah. It's
little sips of water.
yes, little sips of water,
Go with it.
trying to,
Chug a whole gallon.
chug the whole thing at once.
Yeah.
Exactly. Give your brain time to like absorb and solidify the information without getting overloaded.
That's such a good analogy.
Yeah.
And finally, they had these really encouraging words about not being afraid to make mistakes.
I love that.
Because, that fear can be such a huge barrier for a lot of learners.
It is because, we think of mistakes as like a bad thing, but actually mistakes are just feedback. They're showing you what you need to work on.
They're like a guidepost.
Exactly. They're a necessary part of the learning process.
Yeah. And every mistake you make is a step closer to getting it right.
Exactly.
So to wrap things up for you guys, listening to this conversation from English Insights, it really gave us some clear action points, like starting by actively listening.
Yes.
Building your vocabulary by reading, using those new words. Pay attention to verbs, how they change, how native speakers pronounce words.
And above all,
yes,
be consistent and embrace those mistakes.
Love it.
So I guess a final thought for you guys.
Yeah.
As you're kind of processing all this, think about like just one of those techniques.
Okay.
Whether it's listening, vocabulary building, grammar, pronunciation, how could you actively incorporate even just that one element into your routine?
I like that.
And how might that start to transform your journey?
Yeah, what's one small step you could take today
to get started?
That would make a difference.
And just keep building from there.
Absolutely.
So hopefully this deep dive has given you guys some food for thought.
Yeah, definitely.
Until next time.
See you later.